Papa Joe will be there on the double. Grandpa Shark, Grandpa Shark, Grandpa. All aboard!
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Ángela Ciencia.
I don't think that's a relevant question. Perfect. I don't think so. This is about our lives. This is about American lives. And it should not be partisan. Science should not be partisan.
At some point, the daily drumbeat of depression and terror veers into panic porn. FDR said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
I think the question is,
News sources have to rein it in.
I'll be honest with you. I'm kind of retarded.
We need the news to calm down and treat us like adults.
So guys, thank you so much for joining us again. We're on Zoom because it gives me the opportunity to connect with some really special guests that aren't in the radius of Cleveland now. And so I want to introduce a very special guest of mine. We would celebrate Wednesdays together with American Horror Story and the League, and just the camaraderie and just a group of true friends that I truly appreciated. We didn't always agree on everything, but that was the beauty of our friendship. We would sit around the kitchen table and just debate and philosophize. And at that point in our life, I don't know, it had a huge impact in my growth, and I truly appreciate it. So I feel very special and thankful to have a good friend of mine, Emily Miller, joining me on the podcast today. Emily, thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. It's so good to spend time with you again. It's been a while.
It's been too long. And I'll be honest with you, Emily is a great mind from my college experience. You know, universities were put together in the old days because it was supposed to be this liberal, everybody bring your ideas, free marketplace of ideas, and we'll flush them out. And that's how the good ideas surface to the top. And I thought that was that you and of course, Ariel and Jess and Julianne, the gang, but more specifically, you, I truly appreciated being able to grow and maybe not always agree, but have the ability to, here's my cards, pull my cards on the table, and at least understand a different perspective with an open discourse and the ability to kind of learn from each other. And so I'm so thankful you're not only coming on the podcast, but taking on a topic that I think is very relevant right now and isn't taken or isn't given the credence of importance that it truly is, because it's truly important. So Emily and I are going to talk about academics today in this virtual COVID world. Emily is a teacher. And so, Emily, tell us a little bit about your experience, because you're just starting this new profession and you're hitting the ground running with a great start. So give us a little foundation of how you're starting your career.
So it's really interesting how I got into teaching. I was involved in Greek life a lot and president of my sorority. And when I was president, Teach for America reached out to me and said, hey, you should apply to our program. And I really had no idea what I wanted to do after graduation, so it sounded like a good idea. So I applied and ended up getting in. And for those of you not familiar with Teach for America, it's been around, it's since the 50s or 60s, I believe. And basically their mission is to create equitable education throughout the country. So once you're in the program, they tell you this is what you're going to teach and this is where you're going to teach it. So they sent me to Indianapolis and they put me in early childhood education. But a great thing about the Teach for America program is that they fund a master's program. So I was able to, during my first 2 years of teaching, it's called a transition to teaching license. I was able to go to grad school in the evenings and get a free master's degree in early childhood education. I've taught preschool, kindergarten, and first grade, which is what I currently teach now. And I work at this really cool, we're sort of a charter school. It's called an innovation school. And I work in a low-income neighborhood, and we teach Spanish immersion. So I don't teach Spanish, but my students, they spend half the day with me in English class, and then they switch and go to Spanish class for the other half the day. So it's a different model for teaching, especially in the community we teach at, but I really enjoy it a
So are you
lot.
teaching Spanish or like heavily Spanish because it's a Hispanic community, or this is just kind of like the curriculum of that particular school?
That's a great question. So we have probably, I would say, about a third of our students are Hispanic. The majority is Black, though.
Okay.
But our principal, well, she's not our principal anymore. She's our founder. She is this really amazing woman who studied education and Spanish. So she's not Hispanic, but she's fluent in Spanish, and was really into researching how second language can really put like improve kids' academic abilities and then help them in the real world. You know, people who know two languages get paid a lot more, stuff like that. And she was also really interested in teaching low income. So she kind of decided to combine the two, and my school was created.
Now, this is a very subjective question, but I'm just curious, just because I don't even know who to ask, like who would be an expert in this. But okay, so two places I kind of defaulted in my youth, right? Didn't take music serious enough and didn't take foreign language enough, right? I was more concerned when I was taking foreign language. Listen, I was way too young and just my ADD was too strong, and I was just more concerned with the picking a funny name to even care about where I was. So Spanish, I took, didn't get very well. German, didn't do very well. Then I go to college and I'm taking Spanish begrudgingly because, you know, my degree makes me, and but I will say, then you take a trip to Cancun and I'm like, holy cow, I know kind of what I'm saying. Un poquito, or just a tiny bit, but I understand it just enough to communicate. So there's a beauty in it. And then it gives you an appetite of like, man, I wish I took this more serious. I wish I learned more. I definitely don't have the time or the brain capacity to pick up a Rosetta Stone and give it a try now. So I look back and I go, man, I wish I had more foreign language in my background. On the other hand, I never did music. I was, you know, I did karate. I'm a second degree black belt. That was probably the first real sport I did. And then football. I tried soccer. My parents were just putting me in sports probably to keep me busy because I was just too much full of energy for them. And I guess, you know, you and I, for me, I'll go to college, and that's the first time I really dive into books and take growth academically seriously. And I learned that, wow, I could have, who knows if it's true or how much it would have had an effect, but I probably would have a stronger brain capacity and the ability to think had I picked up an instrument. Now, I guess the real answer here is be like a Chinese kid and do them both. You know, I'm just kidding. But, you know, it doesn't hurt to probably try both. But I'm curious, do you as a teacher, if you had to pick one as more like as an important way to develop your mind, because it's going to be easier for them to pick it up and learn it at a younger age, and the long-term impact it would have is great. If you had to pick one, which one do you feel would probably have a stronger, I guess, intellectual impact?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about music. And one thing I can say is I think it depends on the kid. But
Fair
what
point.
I do,
That's a great
what
answer.
what I can tell you is that becoming fluent in another language makes you better at your own native language. So when I have Spanish speakers who are taking Spanish and English, what they're learning in English class is helping them in Spanish class. Like when we look at like their reading levels and stuff, a lot of time in the beginning there'll be a huge gap. You know, they're stronger in their native language than they are in their in their second language. But over time, they start to even out. So it really helps them a lot. My English Spanish class helps my English speakers do better, especially the way our school does it and successful Spanish programs do, is that the classrooms mirror each other. So not only are all of our classroom procedures and expectations and rules the same in both classes, but our classrooms actually look like a mirror of one another, and that way students can transfer the languages between one another. It's really cool.
Wow.
So I wish I was more fluent in Spanish as well. And another thing you said about how you wish you paid more attention in Spanish class, how many of your Spanish teachers were native Spanish speakers? And how many of them were just...
That's a fantastic question. Okay, so let's do a run through. I had 2 Spanish teachers in high school. One was, one wasn't. Now, I go to college feeling as if I go to philosophy and political science, I get to escape this nonsense. And the answer was hard no. You are also going to, I don't know when a philosophy professor is ever going to need to know, Chinese, but a foreign language was required. So I go and I take the first entry level of Spanish, and she was from Romania. So she was deep into Spanish, but she isn't your stereotypical, what you would think Spanish speaker, but she was from a Spanish speaking country, and did all right. But it was so funny. There's kids in the class that are yeah, I took Spanish 4 in high school, but I just want a little refresher. And she's no one here has any Spanish experience. I'm this kid is twice what I've ever considered doing. He's fooling you all and setting the curve. That's just my 2 cents. So I didn't do as hot as I would have liked. So then I go and take this other one, and I was sick and missed a midterm, and she's you're going to fail. I'm not going to let you, retake it. So I dropped out, and I went and took it at my community college. Literally a fifth of the price, and they were half the students were Miami students. It's just at our community college, half the price, and I got an A. I never deserved an A in Spanish class, I'm just saying. But so it was my workaround, and she was definitely Spanish. So the ones that I had, so the one that said no because of the midterm, she was white as snow. So out of 5, 2 of them were white. The other ones were Hispanic. How about yourself? That's probably the problem, right?
Yeah. That's the really cool thing about my school is they only hire Spanish teachers who are native Spanish speakers. So we have teachers from all over the world, all different Spanish speaking countries. And I think there's a lot to say about enjoying a language when you get the whole cultural aspect of it as well. They learn the right accent. They learn all about countries around the world. It's a lot more than just, the language.
No, that's a beautiful point. I like that. And the truth of it is not only, a lot of the experience of the foreign language is just diving into the culture. And let's be honest, something that foreign language can bring you that math, science cannot is, especially lower income students, they don't have the luxury of leaving. Our good friend Kemp literally left the state of Ohio the first time when we were 20 and we took him to Florida, right?
Oh.
Kemp was very sheltered too, and that's Kemp. So if you think about it, a lot of people don't have the luxury of getting out of their own state, let alone the country. And something that foreign languages can bring you that other classes can't is kind of a worldliness of understanding of other cultures and other geographical locations. And how are you truly going to get that from somebody who lives in your local city? You're not. You need somebody who's going to tell you what it's like to be in Spain, who's actually lived the past few years in Spain. So that's really incredible. It is a double-edged sword. It is weird. I don't know. So I took employment discrimination law, right? And it is a double-edged sword. There is this hard stance on, we can't allow those types of characteristics to determine employment. But it's but we there need to be circumstances. So it's this deadly balance where, we can't go too far over the line because then it could be deemed racist. It could be deemed ineffective, no diversity, but also it's very clear, as both of us have articulated, there is an appetite and need for this in the classroom because you're not going to find it or manufacture it in any other way.
Yeah.
So one question I have for you, as a school that has, it seems, committed to teaching the Spanish language, that means I would imagine then, and rightfully so because it's a dying language, but languages like German, are they taught there as well? No?
Just Spanish, but we only go up to 6th grade.
Okay.
We're like a full just English and Spanish school, and we do have a project-based learning program as well. So families after 1st grade can opt for just for not the Spanish program. They would have Spanish as a special instead.
Okay.
But yeah, no other languages.
So but before I bring it back to the main question I want to ask you, so what happens after 6th grade? Do they go back to like the public middle school system, like the public schooling system? It's like middle school, then high school. So they'll be thrown into a school and a classroom where some of those kids didn't have the same kind of foreign language structure, correct?
The goal is to have a middle school. They're working on it right now. So
there's no middle school right now.
No.
So what are they doing for like 7th and 8th grade?
Well, they'll go to a neighborhood school.
Okay.
But so it's what I say, we're kind of a charter school, is that we have to let neighborhood kids into the school if they live in the neighborhood. But we only started, I think this is our 5th year. So you have a requirement. You can only be in the Spanish program if you started our school in preschool, kindergarten, or 1st grade. So when we first started and we had to accept all these neighborhood kids and we still had a 6th grade, they came to our school, but they weren't in the Spanish program. But those kids who have been here since the start of the school, once they get to 6th grade, we will have the program for them. We're just waiting for like those kids who started in the beginning to get all the way through before we have more. Does that make sense?
No, it definitely does. So, okay, here's the question. This is kind of where I was taking it. I'm curious, when it comes to Spanish, just the language in general, as it was kind of reflected onto me as I was growing up, trying to decide what language do I get into, and I have to take one, which one do I take? And it was always said, well, Spanish is going to be the new common language. It's everywhere. It's only going to increase more, and you need to have the ability to speak Spanish. I think in America, it's even more so because literally one of our neighboring countries, that's the only language they speak. The other one, if you know English, you're going to suffice. So I see the local need for it more than anything. But as again, as it was articulated to me, you need to learn Spanish because it's going to be, it's going to outnumber English speakers at some point. But what's interesting is, and I think it's almost irrefutable, but again, who knows what the future holds? Who knows what the next catastrophe or fire will be? But when it comes to China, it seems like they're probably going to win and they're going to take the cake. So the real question is, should we be taking Chinese a little more serious? Because I think the immediate concern is Spanish because we're living amongst people that we need to communicate with.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're well past this is America, speak American. No, we're all Americans, so you better learn how to speak to half the other country. But what do we do when this entire tribe is going to be taken over by the Chinese? Should we be teaching ourselves Chinese?
Probably. I don't know. There's probably a lot of stuff we should be teaching that we're not.
So I'm gonna take it up another notch. As I'm sitting here being like, you need to be like a Chinese kid, you need to learn an instrument and a foreign language. We should just be juggling all the plates in the sky. Do you think we should be taking more than one foreign language? Or I'm going to take it up one more notch. Don't forget, Elon Musk said that we're all going to get a chip in our head, the Neuralink, within 5 years. And he swears that within 10 years, spoken language will never happen again. And we'll just be speaking digitally. So are we wasting our time altogether?
God, I hope not.
Nobody's cutting my head open. I will personally punch every emoji button I need to communicate with you to avoid a chip going in my head.
I mean, these things control us enough. I feel like we don't need we don't need it in our head where we literally cannot escape it.
But let's be honest, me and you both spoke about The Social Dilemma. So anybody out there that hasn't seen The Social Dilemma on Netflix, you absolutely have to. But when you learn about The Social Dilemma, I mean, isn't it already implanted in our head? I mean,
Yeah.
we talked about this on Monday, or last week, but it's crazy to me that when it comes to these phones, the engineers that created them are no longer the same engineers that created the first iPhone. They took psychology doctors, biologists, and then trained them to become doctorates in computer engineering. So they're dual, they have dual degrees, and now they're incorporating our biology and manipulating our biology into the manufacturing and engineering of these phones. And so it's almost like, kind of like the analogy before, the cards are no longer stacked against us. We are playing a game that you simply cannot win. And I guess what's crazy is you bring up the phone and it's like, isn't it already implanted in our head? It's just detachable because your head is thinking about it all the time. I'm at work all the time, tapping the screen like, oh, nothing yet, nothing yet, nothing yet. I mean, they got us.
I mean, and they have us living in two different realities, talking about how our country is so divided, but do you want to know the reason why? It's because we're all attached to our phones and we live in two different realities. How are we ever going to come together if we can't even agree on what's real and what's true?
Here, that's the key. What's real? I think, so let's just take it to the manifest destiny, what made America what it was, right? Me and Kemp took this college course, and he looked at us, at the first day, and is like, this is going to be like your everyday American history course. This is going to show you the bad side of America. And it was, all of the savagery we did to the Native Americans. But the one beauty about that course was the idea of the manifest destiny, that the narrative amongst Americans were it was our destiny to have this country, build something great, a democracy that beats these royals down and, is the, epitome, the goal for the world. And the way they did that and what made manifest destiny occur and I guess, just simply happen was at the same time this narrative was being peddled, you had the creation of coffee shops and the first newspaper. So what's interesting is you had one central newspaper. So like today, that newspaper definitely got to control the narrative and they got to change and manipulate the story. But the beautiful thing was, and why the coffee shops, in addition to the newspapers, were so significant, was it gave a meeting place, a local spot for all the people to meet, kind of like what universities were created for, to meet and discuss these stories. So while the narrative, it could have been propaganda, it could have been manipulated, the thing that was being discussed on both sides of the aisle or all the different perspectives was the same thing, the same story. And you could criticize it equally, like, well, I'm going to see through the veil of bullshit and tell you that the reality is X. Or, this seems real because of Y. But instead, like you said, and The Social Dilemma shows it, it should be appalling to us that we were trained with the first onslaught of Google that the first search result is what's just common. It's the common search result. But that's not the truth. It's what gets you what you need, what you want, and keeps you interacting. So the fact of the matter is, even me and my father, who you would say, oh, you're probably on the same political line, you have a lot of similarities, let alone me and you, when we go to Google, none of us are getting the same search suggestion. That alone has a major impact. And when you go through that documentary, all the little things, Instagram, just pulling your phone down to reload, they realize, wow, it's like a slot machine. We do it, it reloads, you get a release of endorphins, you interact. But then they realize that's not enough. We don't hook you enough with that. What we will do is every third time you pull it, or randomly, third, fourth, whatever it is, and now when you get it, that dopamine release is so much greater now that you're even more hooked than before. So it's these little, and that's just the one or two little breadcrumbs that leads you right to, the dragon, or, you know, whatever, the death, the end.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what are your
I
thoughts?
recommend anybody who hasn't seen it to watch it on Netflix. It'll open your eyes to a lot.
But you know what's crazy is, as you know, you and I both said, it was stuff that we all kind of knew, right? We all kind of knew they were manipulating us, the social medias,
Mhm.
the you know, device techs. And you could tell, but I don't think anybody realized how deep it goes,
Yeah.
to what extent it is. So I got to ask, you know, I thought I was a hot shot in 6th grade. I got the Razor. I was the first amongst my
I had a
friends to get a
Razor too.
phone. Man, I was hot shot. I loved it. And the technology it had, you could record anything and make it a ringtone. So I was making Candy Shop my ringtone. You know, I just thought I was awesome in 6th grade. Then in 8th grade, the iPhone comes out, and that was life changing. But I guess my parents were so, you know, it was like an iPod. Who was I going to call? No one else had one, so it was never going to do anything. But, you know, I had parents that kind of saw on the horizon the dangers. So I had this strict balance. Never was able to allow to use, you know, when my grades started slipping, in specifically Spanish, I was only allowed to have 1 hour a day where I could text and make phone calls, besides, you know, my dad, my uncle, my mom. Like, you know, it was like select numbers were all the time, but it was like an hour a day. And because I got to see in Spanish, and that's the end all be all. So I only say all of that because, you know, there was no one really having them around us. Definitely the addiction with apps and all TikToks and stuff, that wasn't there. So it was easy to put them down.
Mhm.
What is it like? And then we're going to take this into what the classroom looks like for you, because that was going to be the main conversation of the day. So this could kind of segue us into it. But without kind of considering the digital Zoom part, when you're in the classroom, what is it like today with kids? And you're at a very young age, so I imagine phones don't have much of an impact, but do they? Oh, God. Lay it on me. Let's hear it.
Well, screens are so bad for kids. If anybody takes anything away from this, do not let your child have screens. It is so bad for them. And honestly, until they're like 13, I would say. But all the research shows it causes ADHD. And I can see how, I don't know, I remember being in 1st grade and being okay to sit down in front of a TV and watch a movie. That's not even enough for my kids these days. They can't sit and pay attention to a movie. They have no ability to entertain themselves. They just want things to happen fast, and they need to be constantly stimulated. They can't, and that's the saddest thing too. Like I remember being a kid and being bored out of my mind, and my parents just saying like, it's normal to be bored, like go figure out something to do. And we'd figure out things to do. But kids today don't know how not to be bored, because every time they're bored, their parents give them a screen to look at. So it makes it hard to keep their attention a lot of the times.
You know, just to further your point, my biggest gripe right now, and ironically on our Facebook page, the Rethink Tank Facebook page, we posted something like, you know, something about screens with kids. And this gentleman, Jeremy, who's totally interactive, I love him. He worked at my law school, and he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And he goes, yeah, I won't let my kids touch screens, or, you know, and we kind of were having a talk about that. And I told him my biggest gripe, honest to goodness, is, you know, my sister and I, everywhere we went when we were little, strangers would come up to us and go, you have the most well-behaved kids we've ever seen. And I just thought that was normal. Like, I'm like, everybody must be getting this, because it happened all the freaking time. So I guess I understand with that lens, my standard is a little higher, especially now compared to what people want to do. But I just feel like people just so badly need to have kids. Like, I see it all the time. Like, they're in a rush. I need to get married yesterday. I need to have a kid right now. Like, and then they're not financially ready. They're not, you know, in any way that they're like, and then they wonder why their kid's giving them a headache. Their kids are driving them nuts. And if you go now, so back to my gripe. Every franchise restaurant you sit in now,
Oh,
for $2.99, you can have a little play pad. It's like an iPad with games on it, and it's for $2.99, or their parents just bring their iPad. Instead of having to teach your kid table manners, we just throw an iPad in, and that has replaced parenting, because parenting has become such a burden. And then we sit back and wonder why, we get the result we get out of these kids. That, somebody picks on them online and they want to shoot up the school, or they want to kill themselves because these screen. And then we wonder why. Think about it. For some reason, my good friend Kemp, just because we keep bringing him up, I never see anything he posts on Facebook. And I'm with him all the time. There's not a week that goes by that I don't hang out with Kemp. I see him every day, and yet I don't see a single post of his. But I see some Joe Schmo that I haven't seen since I was 14 saying something that I know is going to trigger me. And it drives, I'm like, oh, who is this dude? I haven't seen him forever. But then again, it's triggered my emotions. I interact with the interface more, and Facebook gets what it wants. And then we act surprised when Facebook is creating algorithms to upset you. It's like, oh, I'm not seeing my friend, but I'm seeing some schmo who I haven't talked to in 10 years because it upsets me. So I guess how do you think we go about this? I just kind of a think tank here. I'm curious. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, right? Or the toothpaste back in the tube. Technology is always going to grow. It's always going to expand. So what do you think we can do? I guess it's stepping up in parenting. I don't know. There's probably more to it than that, but the technology is only going to increase. And who knows if the biological manipulation that comes with it is only going to increase more. How do you think we go about keeping some humanity and controlling ourselves and holding ourselves accountable and being able to beat this thing?
well, I think kid-wise, having limits on screens, because I feel like it's unlikely to say don't ever let your kid get on a screen. Like, they're exposed to it everywhere. They're exposed to it at school. But I think it is one, keep them off social media. They don't need to be on Twitter and Facebook and TikTok, whatever. They don't need to do that. They get enough social interaction at school, hopefully. And two, give them time limits. I know that there's recommendations by the National Pediatric Association or whatever that is for how much screen time a kid should have a day. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I feel like that's an easy thing, or to ask the doctor, your child's doctor, how much time should really they be spending in front of screens. And so setting those limits and sticking to them. Also, there's all these great technologies that will literally like lock your child's device after a certain amount of time that they've used it.
Oh, cool.
Adult-wise, I think it's a lot harder. I think, one, everybody has to be educated on it first. Like we need to everybody needs to understand in what ways is technology controlling our lives. That's the first thing. And then I think if enough people know and there's enough public outrage about it, they can make more humane, what's the word? Like how there's advertising, there's laws about advertising for children. You can't say this and that and that. I feel like there should be laws about internet usage, or I don't know, the companies I think the documentary talked a lot about how the way that the companies are, what's the word, designed is not benefiting it. They want more and more money. If we can redesign the way those are, the way those companies work, then I don't know. I think
so. I want to hear your thoughts on this. You kind of provoked a good approach, I think. Okay, so the social dilemma, they talk a lot about it too, of like accountability. We can't, there's too much anonymity on the internet, and it allows people to kind of avoid accountability for their actions. And like you said, as somebody who, I would love to become a First Amendment lawyer. Like, if I keep being asked all the time, what kind of law do you want to do? I would love to just focus on the First Amendment and the freedom of speech. And so you bring up that there is laws, obscenity and language that results in harm. That is illegal. But again, where do you draw that line? There is a fine line, and we're playing with that line right now. Who knows where we end up in 15 years, but right now is a pivotal point because you've got somebody that says maybe something a little off color or something that, was always fine. It's something that my dad would have called me growing up, but is no longer allowed to be said that offends other people. So the curious question is, how subjective does it need to be? I think if it results in a death, right? You said something to where you posted a picture or you did something that resulted in someone killing themselves. Well, guess what? Suicide's illegal too. So I think it's almost unavoidable that you're accountable in this situation. But again, if you're using a dummy account, you're blocking your IP address, you're using all this technology that makes you essentially unfindable. Or have you ever seen Don't Mess with Cats? Or that was incredible. That was fantastic. But at the end of the day, this person was hunted down and found. So I guess what I'm getting at is, how do you alleviate that? And the Social Dilemma said we need to kind of fight for lifting the veil on anonymity a lot. I mean, I'm struggling with that word, but I think maybe we should force, but again, the internet is global. It is a connection of everybody, is a network of all people. So it's hard for the United States to create laws. I mean, look at China. We all go, all right, folks, we're all going to get an agreement. We're going to make this system called trademarks and copyrights, and we're gonna all hold each other accountable. So when you're the first to provoke a free market and the ability for capitalist innovations, we're gonna say you can own your own brand, or you can own your own innovations and new products and the rights to them, and that will encourage people to want to develop and create these things. And China goes, yeah, sign us up. We're down. And all the other countries agree that we will enforce trademarks and copyrights. And then China just doesn't. They just don't. They just go, yeah, we signed up, but then we're going to steal literally everything. So I don't know how we get around the global hurdle that will be the internet, but I think a temporary one to at least fight the American domestic problem of, students, because that's kind of the main thing, is kids and young adults. I don't see a problem with enforcing user names or profiles to be linked to your social security number, so that you wouldn't be able to sign up unless you are a legal individual in this country. And, maybe Facebook won't know your social security number, and they will want it, so they will find it. If you want to use Facebook, they'll take it, but I'm just playing, the game here. And if they don't want to take it, or they want to say we won't take your social security number, but at least it's somewhere for the government's access, or it's recorded or documented somewhere to where at least every profile then is accountable. So again, you could go on the internet and say the F word, because you could say that in the Times Square, but you posting the picture of the little 13-year-old girl in your class who sent you a nude photo that results in her killing herself, well, guess what? It's time for you to be held accountable. So I think it's a temporary fix. I don't know how we get it. Maybe you can help me. I don't know if you have any ideas, but I don't know how we get over the global aspect. And I think that's what's really holding back policy. But at least there are some domestic fixes that we could strive for.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of transitioning a little bit, I'm curious. We're talking about devices, technology, and there's some real beauties in it. I get to talk to some great minds like yourself on the, states away, but then also, as clearly articulated, there's some downfalls to it. So I'm curious, Emily, what is it like teaching in this age where, we have this fear of social distancing and a disease that exists? How deep the threat is a real question, but I'm curious, everybody had to adapt and keep moving forward, but everybody had their own approach. So to kind of kick off our conversation, I'm going to pose it in this way. I know of two true or just a few approaches to academics for the youth today during this pandemic situation. And we have people going fully back to school, people staying fully online, or hybrid, where we have people coming in, 2 days a week and the rest are online. So what is the approach that your school is taking?
So we have, we had for the first 3 weeks of school, everybody was virtual. And then, except for preschool was allowed in the building. And then after 3 weeks, they gave families the choice. And this was only kindergarten, first and second grade. You can come into the building, completely normal school day, or you can remain virtual. The catch is, though, that there's only 16 spots per classroom. So honestly, I feel like a lot of families wanted to do in person, and there's quite a few of them that are on the waiting list still waiting to get into those spots that are still virtual. And then I believe in 2 weeks, we're doing the same thing. We're letting the higher grades come back, still offering the virtual option for families. But yeah, go ahead.
No. I'll say my question.
Well, I was just going to say that virtual learning, it can be successful for older kids and affluent families. But I found, especially in the spring when I only had the option of teaching virtually, that it was not good. It's for the little kids and for the families whose parents work a bunch of different jobs. Honestly, there were quite a few kids I can think of who I just completely lost touch with. I couldn't get a hold of their parents ever. They never signed on to Zoom. It's so hard to hold them accountable when, it's virtual. So I hated teaching virtually, and I didn't feel like my first graders got very much out of it.
And see, that's heartbreaking. So I am curious because, again, there's 16 kids that get to at least live somewhat of a quasi-normal childhood. But then there's other kids on a waiting list at the edge of their seat just trying to be I want to look at some of these, 8-year-olds and go, did you ever think you'd be begging to go to school? This is crazy. But I am curious, do you see it ever getting to the point where you will have a full classroom? Is there efforts being taken in hopes that maybe we could get to a full capacity again and let those on the waiting list? Or is it like, this is the new normal, this is where we're going to be?
I think they're letting us add 2 kids to each room after fall break. And they've said that they are going to be offering virtual for the full school year. So my guess is they're going to keep adding more kids eventually. But to be honest, these small classrooms, like having 16 kids, is the most amazing thing ever, because classroom management is so much easier. And, we were talking about parenting earlier. Well, let me tell you about kids' behaviors these days in school, especially low-income communities. I've been hit, I've been bit, I've had my classroom torn up. Like, every year it's something. But having a class like this size, one, I can get to every kid. I feel like I'm actually able to teach everybody. And two, it's so much easier to manage a classroom when you don't have like 25 kids. So it would be nice if we didn't ever go back to full capacity, but probably eventually we will be back.
But see, okay, I think you articulated a really great point, right? It really highlights the flaw in our academic system more than this pandemic situation, more than anything. We realize we default in so many different ways, them being the way you and I discussed last week, the way we test these students, the way we educate them, the subjects we pick. I mean, there's a whole reform necessary here in all fields. But I think and again, I understand facility limits this, but it seems like maybe we're seeing the fruits here, guys. There's some really good things that maybe our teacher gets to be a little bit more intimate with each kid and make an actual connection. Because again, as especially at the age that you're teaching, you know, having a cookie cutter way to teach a subject is not going to connect with everybody. But if you have the ability to be more intimate with each student, you can kind of tailor the format and the approach to make a more impactful connection with all these kids. And so maybe let's take note from the teachers, the soldiers on the ground, and realize that let's stop worrying about adding two more. And I'm really gonna make a comment on that. But instead of adding two more over the course of a long time, let's start adding one teacher, and then another class of 16, and then down the line add another teacher, and another 16. And again, when we're not, is your class, because our school got rid of music, gym class, and art class, because that's where COVID is. It's not anywhere else. It's just when you're playing with clay and playing the clarinet is when you're going to get sick. So the things that are the most important for these kids at their age are not, those subjects are taken out. I'm curious, do you teach that at your school currently? And if they're not, maybe we could start taking over some other classrooms. I got to imagine there's rooms that are not being fully utilized. Maybe we have a classroom in the library for half the day, you know, and maybe you move around for the accessibility of other students. But I don't know. I hate hearing that there's somebody that wants to go to school, is stuck on a list, and like you said, they are not getting any type of education, let alone the level of education that their counterparts in the classroom are getting through a Zoom class. So I threw a lot at you. Let's hear what.
Well, one is having enough teachers. I mean, it'd be great if we could all have smaller classes, but the reason I think our classrooms are normally so big is just because we don't have enough teachers not just enough teachers, but enough good teachers. And especially low income, you have to be really good at classroom management, because they have so much trauma, and because of trauma, behavior problems, and it's not for everybody. I'm going to be honest, it's really hard. So it's hard to find good people who are good at it and want to do it. And, but yeah, and then another really hard thing about it too is we don't leave our classroom now. You know, normally we'd go here for lunch, and we'd go to this classroom for specials, and we'd go out, you know, to the playground for recess. Well, now everything is in our classrooms. The special teachers come to us. We eat lunch and breakfast in the classroom. Basically, they're stuck at their desks all day.
No recess?
They do get recess, but they can't be out on the playground with another class. We kind of have like a rotation schedule. So really, they only get to go outside for recess every other day. And we do indoor recess in the classroom, but they can't share supplies. So what I've done is I've bought little Play-Doh containers for each of them. So they each have their own little Play-Doh they can do, but they need to run around. I mean, I believe recess is one of the most, if not the most important part of the day for little kids. They need to run around. They need to socialize. Kids learn best through play. Like, there are so many important things kids learn through play and recess, and
so
really
I'm just curious, you as a teacher that I got to imagine you're hyper aware of that, based on, you know, more than maybe like an older tenured teacher, or maybe not, I don't know. But I know, knowing you, I feel like you're more versed in the need and the psychology of it more than most. And so I'm curious, you as a teacher, even if you wanted to, let's just be like, okay, I understand the necessity of this, and okay, I understand 2 of the days we're going to be stuck in this classroom, but you need to burn energy, or I'm going to lose my mind because you're going to be stuck with way too much energy with me. But also, you need it biologically to do that. And for today, I think we're going to play Duck, Duck, Goose. Are you allowed to do anything like that? Or when you're in the classroom, you're going to get your Play-Doh and you're stuck in your corner. Are you allowed as a teacher any type of rope to go, okay, we're going to be quarantined together, this little group here, and we're going to, like I said, duck, duck, or something to just kind of move. Are you allowed to do that?
Yeah. So I don't know if you've ever heard, you probably have never heard of this website, but it's this awesome website called Go Noodle, and it's literally just brain breaks for kids. So they have all these different types of videos where the kids can like sing and dance along. We do those constantly throughout the day. I'm like, anytime I see them, like, I see that a lot of their attention is just not there. They're like getting really antsy. I'm like, all right, we're stopping whatever we're doing and we're going to move our bodies.
I love it.
So yes, absolutely.
That's awesome. So at least there's some light of it. When they go off to recess, what are the limits? Like when I was a kid and there was no world shaking pandemics, we were just like the door was opened and a couple rubber balls were thrown out and some jump ropes that we only used to hit each other with that because they were plastic. Like there was just random stuff thrown out and then we just ran loose. Is there like any restrictions, like stay in your corner, no one's allowed to use the monkey bars because Billy coughed before he used them? What's it like?
They can't touch the playground equipment. They're not allowed to. Luckily, our playground's really big, so there's like a whole basketball court and like a big field of grass. So it's not like they're confined to a small area. And we've got lots of balls for them they're allowed to kick the balls around. But
how does that
it.
work? The monkey bar, which is stationary, is touched by Billy and it's done for. But I kicked this ball into Susie's face with the COVID just all over it, and that's fine because it's not the equipment.
It doesn't make much sense to me either. I'm like,
You want to hear something funny?
Equipment, but they can touch balls. I don't.
So I went to Nashville 2 weekends ago, and this story cracks me up. The airport, the terminal, everything, security, taken very serious. Baby cakes, you keep that mask on. It is important. And so I'm sitting there dying in a mask for hours. Not allowed to take it off on the plane either. I don't know if you remember that story when there was like a lady on the plane and she was just like, I'm in the sky. What are you going to do? And the marshal arrested her and they landed the plane. And yeah, so you got to have your mask on. But on Delta, when they hand out your little baggie with your little Dasani water, your Cheez-Its, and your biscuits, well, everybody's allowed to take their mask off. It's all handed out at the same time, and everybody's allowed to take their mask off for snack time. And it's like, wait, so in the flying tin can in the sky, I'm allowed to take my mask off for 10 minutes or whatever for snack time, but every other moment it's a dire. And it's like, again, I only point out all the loopholes or the holes in the logic, not because it's like, I think we need this is where, we could fix it. Or it's like they're everywhere. Every precaution you see has a major loophole in it. And the only reason I point it out is it's like, guys, one, it's not doing anything. But two, if this thing was the severity that we've been led to believe, this would be exacerbated beyond control at this point because everything we've done is literally phony. None of it's real. The judge, she puts in all this plastic and everywhere. Every corner has like a half-inch crack. It's like...
It's the appearance. It's the appearance of safety to make people feel more safe without, like I spend so much time in my day, we're supposed to be cleaning, wiping down surfaces, except the research shows that it's highly unlikely to contract the virus from touching a surface.
Boom.
You're much more likely to get it through, the air, like talking to someone who has the virus and them getting their germs all over you, right? So I feel like sometimes I'm wasting all my time sanitizing stuff when like what I really need to be doing is making sure the kids are keeping their freaking masks on because they won't keep them up because they're little kids. And also the same thing, like it's like restaurants. I have to wear my mask until I'm seated at the table, but then once I'm sitting at the table, what's the point of that? But it's the same in the classroom. They get to take their masks off for meals, and we're supposed to give them mask breaks, and so it's like.
So I don't know if you've seen it, but there's TikToks all around where somebody hits a massive vape pen with their mask on, and it shows like your breath essentially, and how it just as if like the mask did nothing for the smoke. So anyway, we were out at like this steak dinner and it's on a patio. So there's just tons and tons of people. And I watched our friend, Doug, take a hit of his vape and a cloud come out. And literally it just goes through like 4 tables. Just, and I'm like, again, it's just, Joule dust, but like, what if that was COVID? Literally is COVID, but we just can't see it, right? So when I watch this cloud, I'm like, oh, but because we're on a patio and it's outside, we're safe. It's like, no, this whole thing's a sham. I don't know. I guess honestly, it isn't the same, but I think it gives you an ability to kind of visualize, I don't know, through the veil of nonsense. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I understand you've got a lot of struggles right now,
Yeah.
especially kind of with balancing the digital and everything. How do you see this evolving? Where do you see this ending, or is it almost unable to tell?
It's so hard to say. I mean, everything changes constantly. My school has, and it's not their fault, you know, they're just trying to follow what the city is doing, what the state is saying, what officials are recommending. But things just change constantly. First, we were going to go back to school as normal. And then about 2 weeks before, they were like, we're pushing it back 2 weeks. And then we were going to go back to school as normal. And they said, nope, we're going virtual. And then it was going to be, we're going to be virtual until fall break. Oh, wait, never mind. Nope, we're going to bring kids back into the building. But only these kids, like, it just changes all the time. So it's so hard for me to know or say, how long is this going to last? Where is this going?
Here's a more poignant question I have for you. As somebody who is well-versed in the study of psychology, I'm curious, what effect do you see? I mean, this is clearly going to have an effect on the youth. It is clearly going to be damaging. The real question at this point is, how severe is that damage going to be? So my question for you is somebody who's intimately just there, boots on the ground, you're there, dealing with this on your day-to-day, but also has a deep experience in studying it. What effect do you think we could see coming from this on our youth?
Well, honestly, I'm a huge literacy teacher. Most of what I teach is literacy and math, but mostly literacy. And I really worry about, you know, kids not being able to read. Once you get to a certain point in a certain age or a certain point in your development, it is significantly harder to become a proficient reader. And I'm not as worried for the kids who are in wealthier homes and who have educated families who have the time to read to them and be read to. I'm mostly worried about, you know, my population of students who some of their parents don't even know how to read themselves, don't trust education because they have their own terrible experiences, and don't value education or don't have the time to value their child's education. And those kids are missing important learning experiences in a vital stage of development. So that's a big thing. But I also think, you know, social emotionally, kids are going to be suffering. You learn so, I think especially the early years, some of the most important things about school is that social aspect and learning how to regulate your emotions and feelings. And it kind of sounds silly, but it's what creates successful humans. And they're just really missing all of that, not being at school. So
Another question for you is, what do you think is going to be more damaging? I mean, here's the real problem is when we look at these Gen Zs and the younger generations, they've got a whirlwind of damage headed their way. Not just missing out on school. We had a whole first half of this podcast was on the damage technology is going to bring, and that's only going to grow exponentially. So what do you think is going to be more damaging, as we're talking about kids being parented by iPads and don't even know table manners or how to cope with their emotions, and they're being bombarded with, you know, technology that manipulates their emotions and their frame of thought? Do you think that losing this developmental period in their life because it's lost, it's gone. And there's some that are cultivating it. Like there's kids in our neighborhood that when they're not at school, well, guess what? All 10 of them are playing kickball in the cul-de-sac, right? Like there are people taking the initiative, and I think it can be compensated to some degree. I don't know if completely, but ignoring those, anecdotal situations, do you think it's more damaging losing this developmental period in your life, or the technology that's manipulating their, like you said, it's developing ADD in children, it's manipulating their ability to think and behave. And so what really sucks is we're slamming both of these oppressive, influences on their life. And yet which one's worse? I don't know. Which one's worse?
It's hard. It's hard to say. I don't know. I think if I had to prioritize, I would say it's worse not to be at school interacting with other people just for mental health reasons. But it's hard because it's like, some of them have families that are high risk, and a lot of my kids have asthma. That's another thing. So many kids have asthma these days. So it's hard, physical health is important, but mental health is important too. I mean, which do we put first? And again, it's hard to know what is real and what's not real, and that we see in the news. And I don't know. I wish I had all the answers.
Hey, it's going to be up to our generation to find the answers.
Yeah.
So we're going to sit here and postulate, but it's not going to be the end of it. We're going to have to find these answers, or else these kids are going to be walking drones.
Yeah. And just, being millennials, we have a higher rate of depression and anxiety than any generation before us. I'm worried, like, what is Gen Z's mental health going to be? Are they going to have as much anxiety and depression? Is it going to be worse? Are they not going to have social skills? Like, what I worry about is, picking up on social cues, being able to talk to someone and look at them, and without them telling you, I can see how you're feeling. I can see how what I'm saying is making you feel. Are Gen Zers going to miss out on developing those types of interpersonal skills because they're on technology more than they are face to face?
I mean, you're probably 100% right. And you know what stinks is even again, there's layers to this, and there's probably layers we haven't even addressed. But to even throw on top of it, when you're dealing with technology or dealing with the lack of socialization, on top of it, the place that you're supposed to get all this from, you genuinely have a fear for, whether you internalize it consciously or not, that you're gonna get shot. Listen, when we were in high school, there was a school shooting, and we ended up, befriending a girl at Miami who was in that class, and it just blew my mind that her youth, this happened to her. But I was 45 minutes, 50 minutes away in my high school. Our teacher had a little talk with us, but it was such an anomaly and so new that I got to have the privilege of this ignorant perspective of, well, that's never going to happen to me. That's an anomaly. It's 1 in a million. It's never going to happen. Whereas these kids, it's going to happen. It's going to happen to you. Jump under your desk and hide, get ready, because that kid you picked on is going to come shoot you. And it's like, throw that on top of the fire too. I mean, the things these kids have to deal with, and then we wonder why, but again, at the same time, like I said, this stuff brings some damage, but it brings some beauty. I can't tell you how much of a smile it brought me. My dad and I were going to get a haircut on Friday, and we're driving there, and we passed these little kids. Again, they couldn't have probably been older than like 8. And they're coming up to the fire hydrant, and they're propping their phone up, and they're all doing, it was not very well choreographed, but they're all doing a TikTok dance together, and it made me smile from ear to ear. It was beautiful. And it's like, again, when we did it, I was laughing with our neighbor. I go, when we were bored, you had to come up with something, as you said, and we're like, you know what, let's just go build a golf course or a putt-putt course. And we were just digging. We didn't know what we were doing. Nobody ever used it. Did it ever develop it? No, but we spent the day with a shovel digging holes. And that was a fun day. I had a blast, and it was just digging holes. So did the way we alleviate boredom change? 100%. Is it 100% damaging? I don't know. I mean, there's some beauty in developing creativity. As somebody who loves making content, and listen, I'm telling you, nobody makes me laugh harder than myself. That's the only reason I do this thing. So I understand the fun. Maybe it's just evolving, and I think it's education, it's exposure, learning that there's apps out there that teachers get to utilize to get up and move because recess is canceled today, but we're not going to let it stop us. Maybe the same thing that's damning us and holding us back is going to be the same thing that pulls us out of this. Or they're just going to take us all over and it's going to be the only thing left.
I don't know. I think there's really great pieces of technology. Like we have this, I'm sure you know about Google Classroom. Well, for little kids, we have something called Seesaw, and it's amazing. You can post assignments on there and interactive stuff where you can talk with families and kids. So like for those kids who are doing virtual, they have something that technology has brought us to make it feel like you're more in the classroom. And there's all kinds of great like interactive like classroom tools. Like I use one and I can't remember what the name of it is, but basically like the kids hold their iPads and I have like my own screen and I'm controlling like what questions are popping up, and it's super interactive, so they can like pick like a multiple choice answer, they can circle something, they can draw me a picture, and all of their responses get sent to me, and I can it's really cool. A lot of things I'm able to incorporate into my classroom that technology brings. So I definitely don't think it's all bad.
That's awesome. I mean, again, that sounds way better than a projector. Let's be real,
Yeah,
right?
It's interactive.
Exactly. No, but what's also funny is when we were in 8th grade, they put in the 8th grade hall because the other, 6th and 7th, they weren't sophisticated enough. The 8th graders, all the 8th grade classrooms got smart boards. And that was like the cutting edge technology. Cutting edge. It was going to change the world. And then I go to college and it's back to chalk and never seen. And then I go to law school, and these old people have no clue how to use this thing. No clue. And it's already aggressively outdated. And I'm just laughing to myself in 8th grade. This was going to be it. This was it. Now, the old people don't even know how to use it. It's an extinct old technology, and it's been replaced with an iPad.
Yeah, I always felt like my teachers did not know how to use smartboards. I don't think any of them, maybe like one or two actually used it to its ability, but everybody else just treated it like a regular whiteboard / projector.
I remember my 8th grade math teacher. She was younger. She was like, 28, and she thought like she just knew the technology. Her trick was if you were touching it in two different spots, it would put the mark somewhere in the middle. So she would draw like this and would put the mark in the middle. That was like the extent. I'm like, this has way more it can do than just putting the line in between your 2 points. But she just thought, she's like, look it, I'm going to put the line here. And you're like, this is way more than that. It has so much more capacity. But again, then it became an extinct technology before anybody even bothered to learn it. So
yeah.
How long until Zoom's forgotten and you're a holograph just sitting right next to me doing the podcast?
That'd be cool, though.
Oh my! Listen, they were doing concerts with like Kendrick and Michael Jackson as holograms. So
yeah, that's
it's
crazy.
around the corner.
But they did a Whitney Houston one too.
That's right. So what would be better? A hologram Emily in the students' living room, or do we hologram the students in?
Maybe.
I guess what, listen, I can't sit here and pretend I didn't pay attention to this entire conversation. What I'm learning is these kids need to be here in person. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
They need to be able to do jumping jacks and play with
Play-Doh.
Play-Doh.
Be able to touch things, and it's so hard to gauge their engagement over Zoom. Like some of them it's really obvious. Oh, this kid's riding his bike around his room. He's obviously not paying attention.
Wait, did
This
that
kid-
happen?
Oh, some of the stuff that they would do on Zoom. But it's really hard to tell how much they're paying attention, especially, one of my best tactics for gauging attention is cold calling on kids. And I can still cold call on kids on Zoom, but a lot of times they'll just turn their cameras off if I call on them, or they'll leave the meeting. Like, there's no accountability there. I can't keep them on
Wait,
there.
that happens?
Mhm.
And wait, what grade is this again?
First grade.
First grade? So a first grader's just going, nope, I'm out.
Yeah.
You go, hey, Billy, what's 6 + 3? And he's like, nope, screw it.
Yep. Seriously, yes.
See, that's this generation. I would have been shitting my pants. I'd be so afraid of my dad finding out I logged out of Zoom that I would just go, sorry, Miss Miller, I have no clue. And I'd look like a fool. And then that's just a fear you got to get over. It's just, embarrassment. We're all in this together. But if Billy's just going, I'm out.
Bye. Yep.
Okay, so if you have any more, I want to hear them, because I'll tell you what, when it comes to Zoom Zoom hearings, the beauty of it is they're taking us I would tell this to people all the time. The best dressed you would see for like their arraignment or their hearing, it would be literally a person. The best dressed is a button down and jeans. You're never really going to see anybody in dress pants, and sometimes like a polo and jeans. That's probably the best dress you get. I'm not kidding you. We're talking sliders and slippers and pajamas. That's the most common. And now we're not bringing them into court and making them get dressed. We are taking ourselves into their living room. So we've got people who are like, this one guy, so the judge, she hates it when the camera's moving, right? And here's this guy, camera's moving like crazy. She goes, sir, I'm going to need you to sit down. You're making me dizzy. And he goes, yes, sorry, Your Honor. I'm just putting on a shirt. And then he like kind of moves it, and you could see his face, and he's literally putting on his wife beater, and he's ready to start his hearing for the day. I could go on forever for the things we've seen. I mean, it is hilarious. So I'm curious, can you give me a couple stories? Because I'm having a blast. What kind of stories do you have from Zoom class?
Well, a lot of times they want to show me their pets, which I love. Like,
awesome.
Look, Miss Miller, this is my cat. This is my dog.
And the best is it's literally like a 6-year-old. So the cat's like bending, like they're not really holding it the right way.
Yeah, they don't. So many of them will eat during Zoom. I'll just see them like eating their breakfast.
They make noise while they eat.
Yeah, so I early on learned how to make it so they can't unmute themselves, because they will turn their microphones on to interrupt me with first graders will say the most random things. So I would just be teaching, and then all of a sudden I'd hear like, Miss Miller, guess what? I had apples for breakfast, like in the middle of a lesson.
In the middle of class.
Yeah. So, I had a few kids sometimes in their pajamas or shirtless or, oh my gosh, the worst is when parents wouldn't realize that the microphones were on and I just hear cursing in the background. That was all.
I got a story for you. Yeah.
One time I was teaching, this was at the end of the school year. So this was in the spring. So I had almost second graders. So they knew how to type and use the chat box. And I look in the chat box, one of the Spanish teachers was teaching. So I'm looking in the chat box, and there is just like pages long conversation of these kids going back and forth like, F you, no, F you, no, F you. Literally like 7-year-olds. So that was.
And that's with no anonymity. I am struggling with that word today, but they are not anonymous, and they're still saying that. So what does that say?
Yeah.
Wow. So when I was in the last semester of law school was done over Zoom, it was a total waste of time, money, and education. And law school, you got a small collection of people go straight from college to school, but the vast majority of people have started careers or whatever, so they're a little bit older. And we had this gentleman who had, like 3 kids, and they were all like, 10, 11 or so. and he's doing Zoom, and he didn't realize or forgot that he was unmuted. So he just screams while we're in the middle of Will's, Trust and Will's class. He turns around and goes, "You need to shut the f- up. I am on class." And literally the whole class goes silent. Even the professor. The professor's like 100 years old. I'm amazed beyond belief that he was able to do Zoom. Utterly amazed. And he really couldn't. When somebody would, so you know how like Zoom, you could put it in gallery mode or you could put it in speaker mode, which means the person who's speaking is the one that is like the main big screen. So he would leave it in speaker mode. Somebody would unmute themselves or would be unmuted and they'd like shuffle some paper. So it would bring their profile or like their image up. So he'd be like, "So Will, I'm sorry, did somebody have a question? They just popped up on my screen." And we're all like, "No, dude, keep going." And so this dude had no clue. So when this guy screamed, we literally sat in silence for like 3 minutes.
Oh no.
Just sat there and he just kind of like leaned in and he's looking around. And then finally the guy's like, "I am so sorry. I'm getting messages now. I just realized that I was unmuted. I'm real sorry." And it's like, whoo, not a good look, guy.
Oh no. Yeah. I feel like that I remember right before we started doing Zoom, our principal was like, we have to be really careful. She told us this story about how there was a teacher teaching her class on Zoom and her husband walks by in his underwear, and so all of her students were exposed to like a half naked man. And she was like, "This cannot happen. You have to make sure there's nobody else around. Like there's so many liabilities with that. Like we would get sued. Like don't let that happen." But it's hard when you're in, we're all in each other's homes.
Well, that's it. That's exactly it. We're not, so we were talking. So Doug, our friend Doug, he is working at home and he was like, "I don't ever want it to go back. I love it. I'm more effective. It's the best. I'm just, I have the TV on and I'm sitting at home in my own space, but I'm also able to be more effective at my job." But then Kemp made the same comment back. He goes, "Yeah, but for me, I need to be able to leave. Like I need to be able to separate work from home and that work is here. And then when I leave,
That's how I
home is
feel.
separate." And so I guess we're all wired different. And that's the beauty of humanity and especially America, the ability to kind of be your own uniqueness and different. But I don't know. What do you think? I'm torn. I see corporations wanting to have to buy less real estate. They're paying for office spaces they don't necessarily need, but also, like you said, not only does it open the door to, some maybe HR problems and everything else, but is that really how we want to start doing business? Because once we start, let's look at how corporations work and how the business market and community works. I mean, once it starts working and that's the new path, it goes and it'll snowball and who knows, that'll be the new permanent new normal. So what do you think? Do you think we should kind of have a balance or is that where we need to just start going, is committing to the at home?
I think it depends on what field. And I think maybe virtual, because I have thought about this, I think maybe a virtual setting could be great for specific people, like maybe people who are disabled or who have like chronic health conditions, who, working at home is really beneficial to their health or whatnot. But at the same time, I think there's, like school for little kids, maybe not college or whatever, but I feel like things like that really do need to be in person for us to get anything out of it. But I think after, this pandemic ends, hopefully we'll utilize virtual platforms in a different way that could benefit certain populations of people.
I think you're 100% right, and I couldn't agree more. I think the we may be a little bit more anxious or nervous during this period because it's all new, and that comes with the learning curve. But I guess hopefully that means we'll work out the kinks, and moving forward we'll be able to realize what works, what doesn't, and the best approach, and maybe be able to, it will. That's how humanity works. We're resilient. We'll figure it out. But
Yeah.
Emily, I appreciate you giving us your time and your expertise.
Absolutely.
I was so eager to kind of see what a classroom is like right now. As I said, every school does it so differently. So I appreciate you coming on
Of
here and
course.
letting us kind of pick your
Hey,
brain.
I do have one thing though that I did want to share with
I
you.
would love to hear it.
I have this really awesome dog, and she's a certified therapy dog, and she spends her days in the classroom with me and my kids.
That is
So,
awesome.
yeah,
Now,
that's
I got to ask this. This is
yeah.
I don't know, the antagonist in me. I'm curious, what were the lengths you had to go to get your dog to have that certification?
So we got really lucky. She was already, when we got her, she was so calm and trained, but basically I took her to a therapy dog training class, which she passed in 3 weeks. And then she took this test called the Canine Good Citizen Test. And once she passed that, she was certified. Altogether, it cost me $90 for the class and the test.
And the ability to take your dog on planes, and where people say no. That's the key. No one gets to stop your dog, and it's good. Listen, my sister just got a dog, and it has become the family dog. There is some real medicinal, I will never argue against it, because the way stress is relieved and just happiness is just pulled out of the ethos when I'm playing with that dog, it is incredible. What's funny is I just recently read, I can't remember the full extent of it, but it said the things that make you happiest are completing a task, appreciation and affection from family, and playing with dogs. And
So
I'm
true.
not kidding. Maybe it's the placebo effect of I read it, then we got a dog, but I'm like, this dog is medicine. You
It
can't
is.
convince me otherwise.
Honestly, she's been the best tool I have for managing like strong challenging behaviors. Like if a kid's upset, she calms them down in half the amount of time that they would normally take to calm down. It's amazing.
See, that's really great. I mean, and that allows you to be more effective, and the kids get to play with a dog. Like, who
Yes.
wouldn't want that?
Can you imagine having a dog in your first grade classroom? How cool would that? They don't even know how lucky they are, honestly.
That is so true, especially because, there's only 16 of them, and none of the other classrooms get to have that. So again, we didn't even get to do this, so we'll have to do another podcast and save it for them. But
Yeah.
again, this is where I come in, the high school me, 15 years old, full of passion, saying merit pay needs to be the way we do academics. I'm sorry, I'll die on that hill. I'm kind of bothered that we didn't even get to jump into that conversation, which means that's just more of an excuse for you.
Yeah, another time.
But listen, that means you're bringing something to the table other classrooms aren't. So maybe you deserve a little compensation and motivation for that.
Well,
I don't know.
thank you.
But Emily, thank you again.
Yeah, thanks.
Guys, as we're wrapping up, make sure you can always find us on YouTube, but check us out at the rethinktankpodcast.com where you can, or not just rethinktankpodcast.com, where you can find everything we have, all our podcasts, all of our information. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And Emily, we're going to get you on here again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Definitely.
All right,
Anytime.
guys. We'll catch you next time. Peace.